Chapter 16 of How to Read Literature Like a Professor. It's all about sex. So, Foster opens the paragraph, or the chapter, excuse me, talking about how English professors don't all have dirty minds. And really, he blames Sigmund Freud and his psychoanalytic stuff, and how Freud brought out this subconscious sexuality and things. And so then he dives into going back to medieval times in the squirrel legends and how knights would have quests for manhood, and then like a king might have a famine in his land, which is an unambiguous term for infertility. Then he goes on to speak more about kind of masking sexuality in movies, and kind of how in a scene where characters would do it, they'd use curtains, or the directors would cut directly to waves, and how that's not as blatantly shown as in today. So then he moves on to books, and it's like, well, what's in books? And so he gives this example of kind of like a realtor lady, and she has a bowl, and people set their keys in a bowl, but the husband's not allowed to set his keys in the bowl, and kind of how when keys and locks, and if the woman changes the locks in the house, and then the dude's key doesn't really work, how that's just a really big underlying thing, and how in the story, really it's the realtor's kind of identity as a woman, or the character identity in that book, that's held within the keys and the locks. And then he goes into talk about how kind of sex is taboo, and so they weren't allowed to talk about it, but kind of something they wanted to talk about in a way, or something that they could use to add some meaning and kind of fun for them to play around with. Can we stick this in here and have people not notice us? And censorship was kind of big at the time as well. So like D.H. Lawrence, he had a wrestling scene between two guys. It didn't seem very sexual, but it kind of was if you read it, and same with a rocking horse scene in one of his books. So kind of back to the censorship thing, that's why they had to do it in this way and keep it ambiguous, is because then their books wouldn't get published if it wasn't ambiguous. That's the reason for mask. Also, when you mask it, you're able to read, like Charles Dickens, his works around, like at the family table, and the kids don't really get it and think it's funny, and mom thinks what it is, but is able to play it off like, nah, that's probably not what it means, and the dad's able to kind of sit there and enjoy it, so it makes it kind of family friendly. And that's chapter 16.